you're talking about Roger Brown. Tell us about Roger and some of the other great players that you saw.
How do you keep this brief? When I played at Eastern District, we go over to play Wingate in a scrimmage. And I heard the name Roger Brown. And I'm a 10th grader, and Roger Brown is a 10th grader. And I walked out on the court, and I never saw a basketball player like Roger Brown. Never. This young man was amazing, 6'5", fluid as can be, a picturesque jump shot. Just an amazing, amazing basketball player. And every year we scrimmaged them, and of course I got to play with him down at Manhattan Beach as well, where Roger and Connie Hawkins and other great players would go to play. Our home court happened to be in Bedford-Stuyvesant, because Eastern District, which was built the turn of the century, the late 1800s or maybe 1900, was outlawed because we had a track around the court, and we played at another well-known facility in Brooklyn, which was St. John's Recreation Center in Bedford-Stuyvesant, where great players came out of there. So I got to see Roger play both in high school with his Wingate team, and then different summer leagues, and it was very special. I never saw a 10th grader as good as Roger Brown, Mike.
When I hear about Roger Brown, I also hear about Tony Jackson. Joe?
Yeah. Jack, I would say, excuse me, that Roger Brown might have been the second best shooter I ever saw in high school in New York City. The first one was Tony Jackson, and I had the ignominious situation in the city championship playoffs in 1957. I was a young assistant coach at New Utrecht High School, and on Washington's birthday, New Utrecht played Jefferson. Jefferson had Tony Jackson, Leroy Ellis, and a bunch of students. And every time there was a timeout, Coach Hodersblatt would talk to Tony Jackson and Leroy Ellis, and the other guy sat on the bench. Well, at the end of the half, we were up 39-38, and we were doing pretty well. And being an assistant, I didn't make any decisions. I made suggestions. And I said to the head coach, Jack Gordon, I said, Jack, you know something? We can't play this kid man-to-man. He is going to kill us in the second half. Well, I guess I was prophetic, because he established a playoff record for the Old Garden, 54 points, and we lost by 83-57. And we went home, and they went on, and they played boys high for the city championship. So there have been many great players, and you know, we could go back to the turn of the 20th century, and now the game has changed so much. The rules have changed so much. The players have changed so much. So when people ask you, hey, can you pick an all-time team? And the answer is you have to consider the era in which they played and how the rules changes affected the way the games were played. And one parting shot along those lines. Now, when the game first started, there was no 10-second rule. You could keep the ball in the backcourt the whole game, and that's why New York City developed so many great ball handlers. Probably primary of which was Nat Holman of City College. But you know, it's interesting how the game evolved. St. John's had a team in the 1920s called the Wonder Five. No, it's the late 20s. And, all right, Jerry, you won't quibble over a couple of years. Anyway, they were so good, and they were all Jewish boys. St. John's with an all-Jewish team.
Max
Kinsborough.
Max Posnack?
Posnack, yes.
1952.
Anyway, now we all glorified the old garden, and of course we all went to games there with our GO cards when you could get in for 75 cents maybe, and there was, on the weekends when the Knicks played, there was always a Catholic school game as a preliminary so they get enough fans. Well, anyway, the first college doubleheader at the Garden, as we all know, was played in 1934. And a New York sports writer became the originator of the doubleheader program at the Garden. The first doubleheader was Westminster of Pittsburgh against St. John's, and Notre Dame, which always had a big following in New York, against City College, who had a great center, a man I was privileged to work under, Mo Goldman, a great player in his era. But this was pre-war, and there really weren't any pro leagues of any stature. So Mo went on to play for the Philadelphia Spars, which is an acronym for the South Philadelphia Hebrew Association. And he had great teams, and one of his teammates was Harry Litwack, the legendary coach of Temple, and so on and so on. And Mo, the first game in the Garden was supposed to be Notre Dame and City College, matching Moose Krause, who was a great football and basketball player at Notre Dame, against Mo Goldman, a natural. But Mo Goldman, being very poor, used to play professional ball in the Eastern League and make $25 to $50 a game. And when Nat Holman found out, he was so furious that he said, "We're not playing." So they substituted NYU, who had a great Jewish player named Erwin Klein, King Kong Klein. And King Kong Klein and Moose Krause put on a battle under the boards that would make any of us proud today. And we all know what the mecca of college basketball always was the Old Garden. Now I'd like you to tell me, when you walked into the Old Garden, what eatery was on the right?
Good as neighbors.
That's where you met everybody in Needham.
That's right, the orange room, that's correct. And on the left side, there was Adam Hatch. Anyway, enough of history, and let me pass this over to you.
Yeah, Barry.
Barry, you have some recollections of some of the great players?
One of those guys sitting on the bench, the extras, the academic kids, was a guy we all know who owned Royal Sporting Goods, Len Sherman. And I've had this discussion, who also played for LIU, made all the All-Army team. And we've talked about guys like Lou Alcindor, Green Abdul-Jabbar, Albert King, Bernard King, Ernie Grunfeld, Bill Washington, which is a man among boys, Jim McMillan, Stephen Marbury, and names like Frankie King and Johnny Lee were already brought up. Lenny will constantly argue, having watched and been befriended Tony Jackson until his death, that Tony Jackson was by far better than Roger Brown, better than Connie Hawkins or Cunningham, who had a great college career, pro career, and putting up a statue of him in Philadelphia, that Tony Jackson was the best player to ever play in New York City.